Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jason Murphy, Managing Director and founder of Chase. For those who don't know me, I've spent the best part of 30 years helping solve some complex business challenges within the consumer goods industry. Delighted to welcome you to today's session, which is called Integrated Business Planning, IBP. IBP isn't the goal, one number is. And that title is very deliberate because over the years, I've seen way too many IBP programs deliver beautiful process documentation, impressive dashboards, and regular meetings, but didn't actually change anything that mattered. I'm joined today by two people who've lived this challenge from very different angles. Let me introduce them now to you. So first, we've got Justin Stafford. Justin is the co-founder and CEO of Blueshift. He spent over 2 decades helping consumer goods companies improve their planning, forecasting, and trade spend management. And he's worked directly with organizations like Coca-Cola European Pacific Partners, Frontera, Sanitarium. Justin's going to share why most planning projects fall short of expectations and introduce Blueshift One to our UK and Ireland audience. Also delighted that we've got Mark Jagger with us today. Mark was the head of commercial transformation at Sanofi Consumer Healthcare across multiple markets. He's lived all of this. He knows what it feels like when the monthly SNOP meeting becomes a ritual rather than a decision-making forum. And Mark will bring the practitioner's perspective on the gap between theory and execution. Justin, Mark, great to have you both here. In a moment, I'll set some context for why we're all in this virtual room today, and then I'll ask Justin and Mark to join me in a roundtable discussion to share their own perspectives. If you have questions for any one of our panel today, please submit them in the Q&A window, and we'll do our very best to answer you. And if we do run short on time, we'll make sure we get a summary of all the questions and any unanswered questions in a follow-up email to you within a couple of days of today. So with that, let me start by painting a picture that I suspect many of you will recognize. It's the end of the month. Sales has submitted a forecast. Finance has a different view. Supply chain is working from a third set of numbers. And now everyone is in a meeting trying to reconcile them all. And the problem isn't the people. Everyone in that room is competent and well-intentioned. The problem is that everyone is working in isolation. Different functions don't trust each other's numbers, and frankly, why would they? Isn't it a fact that the forecast is always wrong more often than it's right? This is the misalignment problem in consumer goods, and it's not new. But what is new is that the pressure to fix it has never been greater. Now, most organizations have tried to address this. They've implemented IBP programs, they've invested in SNOP processes, and what happens? Meetings happen, templates get filled in, dashboards get built, but the fundamental problem remains unchanged. I call this process theatre. It looks like progress, sounds like progress, but the forecast is still way off. Trade spend is still invisible, and sales and finance are still having the same arguments that they've had before the implementation started. SNOP meetings become rituals rather than decision-making forums. Planning processes may look impressive on paper, but deliver frustration for the people actually trying to use them. Now, this matters more than ever. In 2026, let me explain why this is different. We've got volume growth challenges. The traditional growth levers just aren't working anymore. You can't just run more promotions and expect the numbers to follow. There's intensified competition from emerging brands, often digitally native competitors who, through their own ability to be super agile, are disrupting established brands with leaner business models and faster decision making. And of course, there's the private label pressure, own label products capturing increased market share as consumers are tightening their belts. And your promotional strategy is directly competing with the retailer's own interests. And then finally, margin erosion. Cost inflation is squeezing profitability while pricing power remains limited. And every single percentage point of efficiency matters. And here's where it gets really interesting, or really painful, depending on your perspective. Trade spend sits at around 15 to 25% of revenue. For most consumer companies, it's the second largest line item after the cost of goods sold themselves. And yet nobody can confidently and consistently tell you which promotions actually made any money. Promotions are eating into your profitability with little visibility on ROI. Finance doesn't trust the commercial numbers, and honestly for good reason. So when trade spend remains invisible, no amount of S&OP meetings are going to fix your planning. And what tools are you using to manage all of this? I'd hazard a guess, and certainly this is consistent with the companies I talk to, that most of you are still piecing together plans in Excel and disconnected tools. Manual reconciliation is consuming valuable time from your most expensive people. You've got tools, legacy systems probably, that commercial teams have lost faith in, separate tools for demand planning and TPM that probably don't even talk to one another. It's fragmented, it's inefficient, and frankly, it's holding you back. So what's the alternative? And this really is the core message of today's session. The goal isn't about better process. And it's not about shiny new software either. The goal is about running the business from one number that everyone believes in. IBP shouldn't be treated as a commercial rather, it should be treated as a commercial capability, not just a planning exercise. And if you frame it that way, everything changes. You're not trying to improve meeting rhythms. You're trying to move from a constant reconciliation challenge to a single consensus plan that you're running the business against. So what does it actually mean? In practice, it means one truth, that the entire business operates against: sales, finance, supply chain, all working from the same numbers, not reconciling differences every month. Now, it might not be a number we like, but it's the number we are all working towards. It also means a forecast your supply chain can reliably plan against, moving from the typical 60% accuracy through to 85% or higher. And that's not a planning improvement, that's a complete commercial transformation. So with that, let me hand across now to, well, actually before I do, just before I move across to Justin, let me explain what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover essentially sort of four things. First, the integration gap, why having separate tools for demand planning or TPM isn't enough. Second, the one number concept, how to move from constant reconciliation to a single consensus plan. Third, why the most successful implementations are built from inside the industry and not just adapted from generic platforms. And fourth, and very, very relevant today, AI in IBP. Dispelling the myths about Gen AI versus machine learning and the importance of a human in the loop approach. So with that context set, let me hand across now to Justin, who's going to explain and introduce Blueshift to you all. Justin.
Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate the opportunity to share today. And we'll just spend a few minutes going through, I guess, a little bit of the Blueshift story and the kind of value that we bring to clients and our journey. So let's just go through a few slides, Jason, and we'll go through that story together. So it was founded, Blueshift was founded close to 25 years ago now, when my co-founder and I were actually working in a large FMCG in Australia that they were facing, and actually were working with them on an internal system that did a very similar, took a very similar approach to the one that Jason mentioned. And we definitely noticed that there was a gap in the market where, having a one number approach would really add value. And so we signed a deal with that FMCG and have applied that approach very successfully across the ANZ markets, working very closely with a large number of large and small FMCGs, specifically with the combination of the demand, TPM and TPO functions to bring together into a one number approach, and have really seen the benefit of that. And now with it only continues to improve, especially when you layer on top AI and automation, which we'll talk to shortly. So that's a little bit about the story. And if we go to the next slide, thanks, Jace, we can have a look at the kind of business functions, if you like, that are covered. But when it all boils down, we're primarily talking about combining TPM, TPO, and demand and financial forecasting into a one number approach. And that touches these business functions. It touches joint business planning, which is your relationship with the retailers. It touches finance as far as claims and accruals and financial forecasting. It touches supply chain as far as the demand forecast, and as well as the back end processes, and obviously budgeting. So it touches quite a large number of business processes, and fundamentally you're looking to streamline and automate and get improvement across all of that, which we'll talk to. Thanks, Chase. In terms of implementation, I'm not going to talk in detail, but this is just a quick introduction to how we implement. It's a combination of a waterfall and an agile approach, where we look to get consistent feedback throughout the whole piece, so that at the end of the day, you end up with a high quality one number output, because having business confidence across all the functions in the number is the most important thing, and the implementation process is structured specifically around that. Thanks, Jace. In terms of why we chose Chase, so as you heard Jason with the introduction, they are very strongly aligned with Blueshift as far as this one number approach, and their experience is very strong in this space, and our team actually has a working relationship with Jason and his team historically as well. So it's a very good fit for us to work together. We already have a strong working relationship, and to us, having a strong working relationship is foundational. And I guess looking at the UK, it's very complementary in terms of the market. So we see the UK, and our team has experience there already as a place where it's very similar to the markets that we already operate in. And so we see the success that we've had in the markets we're operating being very applicable in the UK. And so we're excited to bring that value to the UK in our partnership with Chase. Thanks, Jason.
Very good. Thank you, Justin. That's a great introduction to Blueshift. I know there's a number of people on the call that may not, some will be familiar with you, but some less so. So that's a great introduction. That now brings us nicely, and welcome, Mark. Thank you for joining. And it brings us now nicely to the meat of our webinar today. And I warn you both, I've come prepared. So I'd love to start a conversation with you both, just talking about your own experiences from different perspectives around this topic that we're sharing today. Just, I'm going to start with you. Many people I talk to struggle with forecast accuracy. Supply chain, always firefighting. How does the one number approach actually help them plan better?
Yeah, sure. So the one number approach is really designed to bring together the technology side and the process side to build, I guess, a culture of confidence in the forecast number. And so typically the different departments have different agendas. So supply chain is looking at generally a slightly more pessimistic forecast that tends to be a channel product or DC product focus, whereas sales is usually a customer product focus and is more optimistic. And finance are looking at it from a claim accrual finance perspective. So there's different perspectives in play. And so from a process perspective, there's often challenges to align, as well as the technology. But when the business can align on a one number approach and build confidence across the business units, there's significant value to be had.
Just despite that, there's still, I think of demand planning in particular, still a lot of time being spent in spreadsheets and offline systems and so on. I mean, should that really be the norm in 2026?
Well, we obviously would say not, but we understand that the tooling, hasn't been there to support that. We tend to see that the TPM systems are separate to the demand systems, are separate to the ERP systems, and the integration is not as strong as it should be, which is obviously what we advocate for, so that you take away the technology problem and focus on the cultural and the continuous improvement side.
Got it. Mark, maybe one for you. Obviously, within any consumer goods company, promotions are typically a significant portion of the demand. 20%, I've seen some organizations when it's as high as 40% of revenue going back into promotions of one form or another. But still today, organizations struggling to really understand which ones are the most profitable. How best, in your experience, can we get visibility into this?
Firstly, good morning, good afternoon, Jason, Justin. So, thanks for the chance to talk to you guys today. Look, nobody's alone in this situation, right? Every company is struggling with this visibility on promotional ROI, promotional effectiveness. It's often the second largest spend item within the P&L, right? And my experience has been around 60% of promos don't even break even. Experience, and that's in every single country around the world. And I think there's two things that are really critical to understanding that. One is firstly understanding the role and the purpose of the promotion. But then secondly, and I think more importantly and much more relevant to today's conversation is how that promotion is planned. So does it start ground up, bottom up, based in real life data, based on the historical performance of promotions? How do you reconcile them versus a true baseline? Because often, we can look at a true uplift or an uplift off a false baseline, so that's absolutely critical. And then I think what's amazing now with the technology that we have, it's much easier to add in pre and post evaluation as well, and add in pre and post purchases and sales, because often that's something that gets lost. If you sell a huge amount of volume on promo, when does that shopper actually come back and buy that product again? So having the ability to do that now in a platform is fantastic.
Mark, all of that, despite the advances, and I've certainly seen various evolutions of TPM and demand planning systems over the years, but they still fundamentally require people to actually use them, right? And account managers in particular. I'm not slighting sales and commercial folks here by any stretch, but they're busy people. They want to spend their time in front of customers, and adoption of these sorts of tools is sometimes tough, right? Again, maybe relating to your own experience, how do you really get commercial teams to actually adopt these tools and get away from the spreadsheets or whatever bespoke systems that they've created off to the side?
So I've probably sat on let's say all three sides of the table, right? So I started off my career as a key account manager, and I've suffered the pain of running a TPM platform or working in one, but I've also seen the benefit of it from a global leadership perspective and also on the implementation side. I think the key thing, right? I think there's probably three key things. One, absolutely critical to get leadership and process adoption. So you need leadership to be living, breathing the output of the platforms. That is so critical because it's got to fit into your daily processes. And I think that's what great, a one number really does is it helps you actually land one process conversation within the organization. So that's critical. The second thing is they have to see absolute value when they use that data. Because yes, it is time consuming. Yes, it is something that does require attention to detail and it does require a workload. But if they see value, if they get the ROI, if they see their business moving forward, if they see promotions having more effectiveness, they're able to reallocate spend in the right way. If they see that value and the output and the analytics that come out of it is absolutely critical, then I think they'll start to use it even more and they'll start to see better adoption. And I think the last thing, which is critical, I think in every single tech IT conversation today is the quality of the data. If they trust the data that comes out of it, they will start to move away from using their Excel spreadsheets. You've got to imagine they've been using their Excel sheets for the last 20 years potentially, and so bringing in a new system is sometimes scary. So data quality is critical.
Okay, no, that's good perspective. It really is. So just as we think about another community within who are critical to the whole IBP process, I start thinking about our finance colleagues, finance controlling. Often, they may have even sort of sponsored and chaired these types of initiatives and implementations before. What's different now? I mean, if people I talk to, they've typically been through one, two, or more in some cases, different sort of goes at it and different, whether that's systems or process changes. Yeah, what makes this different now than maybe what's gone before?
Yeah, sure. I think that these days there's different, I would say, in terms of vendors in this space, uh, different levels of quality as far as their engineering focus. And so I think that um, vendors like Blueshift with a strong continuous improvement, continuous delivery, AI, strong engineering culture bring technological advances that do really make things a lot easier these days. Like we're automating, we're taking 90% of time savings out of claim processing space these days. And that's based on surveys of our client base. So there's fundamental shifts in the kind of value delivered to all of the team, finance included. So I think the time saving is one thing, and then the other value propositions that come to the fore, like your forecast accuracy and your spend optimization, which we'll cover later. I do think that the time is right to invest in these kind of solutions now, given the value proposition that is being delivered.
So I do want to come. I'll come back to in a moment the whole sort of where AI has a role to play, particularly in the forecasting area. I know, Justin, you've got a pretty interesting point of view around that, which I'm keen to hear. But before we do that, Mark, again, relating back to your own experiences, we talked about forecasts, and we talked about commercial forecasts. There's the financial budget. Um, how best to reconcile the two together to avoid having two different versions of the truth? What's the what does good look like in that context?
Firstly, Jason, I think you're lucky if you've only got two forecasts in an organization. There's probably three or four happening in
Right.
most, I would imagine, with the supply chain and the marketing one as well. But I think the key thing is that's exactly the problem we want to solve, right? We want to have one single number that the organization builds together. So
Mhm.
it's got to be a number that sits in the middle of the organization, in the middle of the process. It's really critical for me, certainly as a commercial leader, that it starts bottom up with the commercial teams who are on the ground, speaking to the customers every day, understanding the shopper behavior changes, etc. So it's got to really start with that commercial base. After that, really the intention would be as part of a best-in-class IBP process, we want that number to flow upwards into the organization, into the financial community that actually build on top of that bottom-up forecast that's been built.
Right.
And so it's absolutely critical rather than having forecasts that are built with separate models, with separate approaches, we focus on one number that gets adjusted and grows, not necessarily financially, but
Yeah.
grows in quality throughout the organization. So for me, that's really key. And I think the other thing that I would say, getting great visibility. That's the best thing about a TPM solution is
Right.
it gives the whole organization great visibility. All of a sudden, you've got everything at your fingertips. It's not hidden away in someone's Excel spreadsheet on their laptop, etc. And so, for me, once all parties have visibility, you're able to have a much better conversation to get to one truthful number.
Clear. Right. Okay. Thank you, Mark. That's great. Um, we talked about AI at various points through this. You can't. It's a conversation that's everywhere today. But AI in planning in particular, and Justin, coming to you on this one first. What's the we hear about the role of Gen AI. We hear about machine learning. For everybody on the call, just give us a little bit of a kind of a debrief, if you will, just in terms of the role of AI, and should our planners be scared of or worried about AI taking their jobs? What's the role of AI in planning? What can we expect?
Yeah, sure. As we know, AI is very hyped at the moment, and rightly so. There is significant value to be unlocked there. And you mentioned Gen AI, and at the end of the day, AI is fundamentally about prediction, and the generative AI that we are more used to these days is about predicting the next word and generating. That's why I guess it's called generating. The difference that we deal with in this space is that we are very number intensive. So there's a lot of sales data on the scan side, on the invoice side, and many other data sources. And so what we're trying, or what we do, should I say, do with that data is have custom AI models that are not the generative. So we're not talking about ChatGPT and these generative approaches there. We're using the raw data feeds that are coming in and applying dedicated models that are trained specifically for this domain to produce accurate forecast numbers, which is it's using AI, but it's a different tailored approach to AI to achieve a one number outcome. Of course, the generative approaches are still there to make life easier as far as giving instructions to create promotions and these kinds of things coming down the line. But fundamentally, the main AI is more about taking the numeric data coming in and doing specific predictions around that to produce specific numeric results.
Perfect. No, thanks, Joe. No, it certainly helps to have it explained in those terms. Mark, I know AI is a particularly keen interest that you have as well. My fear is that some clients might be skeptical or suspicious, shall we say, of the actual result. So, again, maybe from your own perspective, how do we know that the use of AI in these kinds of contexts is actually going to give us a step change, a better outcome than just another technology initiative?
Well, as Justin said, right, it's definitely the fashion right now, with all CEOs asking for AI now, but not sure what for. But look, for me, I think there's a couple of things. One, all AIs are grounded in the data that they're connected to, right?
Right.
So, if you look at Gen AI, the Chat GPT, the Claudes, if you ask it the same question, you will get different answers because it actually pulls from different data sources. So in the case of a TPM with Blueshift, it is absolutely critical you have your integrated data that's part of your core data foundation, and not separate to your existing systems to build that trust that we spoke about before, in the numbers that are actually being, let's say, spat out of the platform to actually generate real value that people trust. I think the second thing, again, that's really critical, and Justin kind of spoke about it as well, is the difference between Gen AI and, let's say, um, the forecasting modeling in AI that we're talking about
Mhm.
is there are different roles within your organization. If you understand who needs what in what role, you actually enable adoption better. So you don't always need Gen AI as a key account manager. That's not necessarily the
Right.
right technical AI for you. So understanding the persona of the person that's actually going to be using the platform is really critical to make sure they get the right AI capabilities rather than having necessarily I'm going to ask a question to get an answer. If I don't know what the question is, I won't get the right answer. And so it's really key to use AI in the right way. And that way, then, you can get truly measurable outcomes, and that builds trust in the platform. So for me, it's really, really critical, though, that underlying data component. And that's the hard bit. That's the work that Blueshift will do with you guys, and this is critical.
Good stuff. All right, excellent. Well, thanks for that, Mark. And I suppose just this is probably a good. We talked about the concepts. We talked about what good looks like. We talked about some of the things to avoid. Um, we're fortunate having you with us today because you've been through this with quite a few clients over the years. Um, could I ask you just maybe just to give our audience here today just a little bit of an introduction to some of the customers you work with and maybe share some of the journeys that they have been on?
Yeah, sure. That's no problem. We can have a look at some of the clients. And look, thanks for putting that on the screen. So there's a mix there of, I guess, tier one, tier two, and tier three FMCGs. The common thread amongst the client base there is that there is a grocery focus, but there's also other channels there, like your food service, route away from home, pharmacy, but obviously a common grocery channel structure, a mix of local manufacturing and importation and outsourcing. So a good mix there. But I guess the key thing there in terms of how all of our clients or the vast majority, should I say, is that they're doing the approach exactly like we described. So more than 90% of our clients are using the full demand TPM, TPO financial forecasting to get a one number approach. And so it's a little bit unique in the sense that the Australian New Zealand market is now doing a significant a significant portion of the ANZ market is now doing a one number approach, and it's working well, which is why we're now looking at the UK. And so, yeah, that's a bit of an overview of our clients. Happy to also look at some of the value pillars and case studies. So, as I mentioned earlier, the three key things we look at and continually seek to improve on for our clients is optimizing trade spend. So that, like Mark was talking about, is all about the promotional ROIs and having that visibility. And I really resonated with Mark's comments around visibility being a key pillar, I guess, for optimizing the spend picture. The other is forecast accuracy, and we'll have a look at some of the forecast accuracy numbers we're delivering with those AI approaches in a moment. But we're continually striving and have many case studies around how we've improved, which some of them will share around the forecast accuracy and productivity savings. That's the time saving through automation. And again, we'll have a look at some of the, just briefly, some of the stats around how we save time for our clients. Here's an example. This is an ice cream company based in New Zealand. It's actually now owned by Frenary, which the UK audience would be very familiar with. And this is the slide they sent me 12 months after they went live, and you can see that they grew revenue by 4%, but cut discretionary trade spend by 11%. And so that, they're also talking about the cultural impact of the fact that administrative effort went down, and that actually made the team happier. So there's actually cultural impact there, as well as a significant trade spend impact. So there was multi-million-dollar saving because they, as a result of ROI, reworked their whole promotional program. Sanitarium, forecast accuracy story. So they were wanting a 3% bias improvement, and we delivered 8%. So they were able to effectively close an outsourced warehouse for multi-million-dollar saving in their case. And the next one is relation in regards to a tier one, I guess, FMCG operating in the beverage channel, and they're in New Zealand, and in their particular case, they were already happy with forecast accuracy, but we still were able to deliver big forecast accuracy improvements in their case, which they weren't expecting and that weren't in the business case. They also improved their ratio of trade spend to sales by 0.6. In terms of claim automation, this is an example of time saving, and so we're automating close to 80% of all claims end to end, from paperwork through to ERP, for all the formats which we support, which is the majority. So this is, I guess, an example and of the level of automation rates we're seeing on the back end processing, which are big time saving. Finally, we have some stats around the AI. So this is looking at a couple of the major retailers we're dealing with across different categories and the performance that our AI is achieving. And I agreed with Mark's comments regarding the data quality, and we have a big part of the development of our AI focuses on data quality. And across the board, our AI is getting higher accuracy than our clients are able to do by themselves. And what we're looking at here is comparing our best client in the category with manual forecasting to our AI, which is beating the top client that we have. So not only is this able to improve forecast accuracy, it's also able to save time. So instead of having to rely on manual analysis to do forecasting, this is able to automate it as well as improve accuracy. So this is just, I guess, some of the results that we're getting out of the AI. So again, in summary, we're looking at improving forecast accuracy. We're looking at optimizing trade spend and saving time using these techniques and the one number approach. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Justin. That's great. Obviously, it's really good to see all of this come to life with some real life examples, the journeys that different customers are being on. Everybody's coming from a different place, so no two customers the same, but always good to know that others have been down similar paths before you as well. So now, listen, before we open up to questions, and hopefully a few answers along the way as well, I just wanted to share a couple of things on screen with you, a couple of QR codes. So irrespective of where you are yourselves on your own IBP journey, hopefully there's been some value, lots of value in what we've discussed today. We've got a couple of different options on how you might want to take this forward. If you've already got a TPM or a demand planning solution of some kind, you might be wondering, do I need to replace everything? The answer is it depends. What matters is whether your current tools are delivering the business integration we've discussed, that one number everyone trusts. And if they're not, and if you're still reconciling across different systems, if commercial teams and other teams are still maintaining shadow spreadsheets, then there's absolutely an opportunity to improve significantly. You could argue if you don't have any of those systems and you're running the business today on Excel, in Excel spreadsheets, and you've got nothing formalized, in some ways you're actually in quite a good position because you don't have that legacy approach to workarounds, and the path to the one number can be clearer when you're not unpicking past decisions. Now, a couple of things to help you on the journey. We've got an IBP assessment. We offer this is a structured view, gives you of where you are and what value you could unlock. It's absolutely not a sales pitch dressed up as consulting. It's a genuine diagnostic. We work with you, understand your business. We help tell you what's working, what isn't, and where the opportunities lie. We give you a roadmap that you can follow from there. We're actually offering a special deal around this webinar. So for the first 4 companies that apply within 14 days of today, we're offering the IBP assessment for 50% of the normal price. For more information, scan the QR code, and there's more information via the link that we'll share with you. We also got some free resources. So for everyone who's registered today, you'll receive a copy of our e-guide. IBP isn't the goal, one number is. It's not a product brochure. It covers why most IBP programs don't deliver on the promises, where the value leaks out, and what businesses that succeed have in common. So it's a nice addendum aid and covering and summarizing a lot of the conversations that we've had today. And if you've been through an IBP implementation that delivered process but not results, some of this is probably going to feel quite familiar to you. And if you want to have a conversation, always welcome a conversation with folks about how this applies to you and to your specific scenario, your particular business. Scan the QR code there on the right-hand side. I've spent 30 years working with consumer goods companies around topics like this. Always great to meet new people and understand a little bit more about your own specific situation. The QR codes will remain on screen, but before we do, and Tim, I think we've got a few minutes. I'm going to ask my colleague Tim, who's been busily collating questions, to join us as well. And I'll ask Justin and Mark to join us back on screen as well if we can. Tim, first of all, did we have any questions?
Yeah, we have. Thanks, Jason. You had loads of questions coming in here to the Chase office, which is fabulous. So thank you. Lots of company-specific ones that we'll respond to directly, and we're not going to get a chance to go through all of them today for sure. We're not far off time. However, look, please keep them coming through. If you've got any questions to ask after we've finished, there'll be an opportunity to do so on a survey page. Or if you're watching the recording, of course, you can reach out to us through our website at chasebusiness.co.uk. So on to the questions. Asif has asked quite a few questions, and we will be in contact with you, Asif. Thank you. Or you can book time with Jason through the QR code, of course, if you prefer. I'll start with one of Asif's question. Actually, this one's probably for you, Justin, if you wouldn't mind. I'll remove the company name. Asif says we are a mid-sized business without huge IT resources. And he goes on to ask, how long does the solution take to implement and what does it require from their side? Justin.
Yeah, sure. Great question. So it's generally between 6 and 9 months to do a full end-to-end implementation these days. And the resourcing requirement on the client side is usually primarily subject matter expertise, secondarily project management, although that's something that can be outsourced to us or a third party as well, and some sort of expertise, at least in an understanding SME level of the ERP platform that you're using for the sake of integrations. That's usually the resource requirements and time frame, and happy to discuss further offline.
Brilliant. Thanks, Justin. There's still, I'm sorry to hesitate, there's still more coming in here. Jason, I'll give this one to you. I've combined a couple of questions in one here. Firstly, and I think we've sort of covered it, but if you can just reaffirm, what does good forecast accuracy look like? And another here, We're currently at around 60 to 65% accuracy. Is that normal, or is it underperforming in comparison to others? Jason?
Sure. Obviously, the numbers will mean different things to different people in terms of, the percentage accuracy will depend on a number of different factors. So there's no sort of one number that from an accuracy perspective that means good for everybody. But 60 to 65 is often what we hear where people start. We see that improving to 80, 85. Once people have got proper integration between different systems, better process. Measuring the accuracy at a level that makes sense as well. So we see a lot of people, claiming, good high levels of accuracy, but when you drill down and to see what actually the factory are receiving when it's down at SKU level, then it can get, quite poor. Which, when you actually need to know what products you need to make or what you need to procure, then that gets more important. So the higher the accuracy, the better there. But also, I just recognise it's not all about just planning and forecasting, but we got the introduction of new products as well. So that can obviously have an impact on forecast accuracy. But certainly, if you are 60 to 65, then we could definitely look at ways that we could try and help you get much higher than that.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Just looking at time for one more, I think, which is quite relevant for today. And Jason, I'll ask you. I know we touched on this earlier from Justin, but from your perspective, Jason, the question was, why Chase and Blueshift together? What does this partnership actually mean for us here in the UK?
Yeah, super. Well, thanks for that. Look, I think the bottom line is that in the conversations I've been having over the years with customers, and then more recently with Justin and his team, I think we're frustrated by the same things. We see that the UK and Ireland have been underrepresented by solutions that are specifically designed for this industry, for the challenges that these markets have. And we wanted to address that. So when I first met Justin and saw what Blueshift had created, it was very clear to me that this wasn't a generic solution that was trying to pass itself off as something for consumer goods. This was technology built by people that actually understood the challenge, had lived the challenge, and that's why we were super excited to bring that to these shores and into our customers here in UK and Ireland. And then obviously, what we're looking to bring here is a long-term approach. We're not just here for the implementation. The 6 to 9 months is, obviously very, very exciting from a duration to get things up, running, live and operational, but we're in this for the long term. So this means that we're here supporting you all the way through the implementation journey and beyond as well. So great technology, local implementation partner, and backed up with proper support, and that's what we're trying to solve for together with the team.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jason. There are a lot more questions coming in. We will get back to everybody as promised, but we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I know, Jason, you want to close out, so I'll hand back to you. Thanks for all your questions.
Thank you, Tim. So in closing, look, we hope you enjoyed the session today. We had a lot of fun putting it together. This is going to be one of many such webinars that we're going to do. As Tim said, please do take a chance to respond to the survey. It's important for us to understand, kind of what you liked. Was it useful? Maybe there's some other topics you'd like us to cover. We're certainly planning to do a lot more around revenue growth management and trade promotion management topics as well. Let us know. Would be good to get your feedback on that. I also wanted to take this time to say a very personal thank you to Justin and to Mark, who've both given up their time to be with us today and sharing their learnings with everybody here. Gentlemen, thank you. Really, really do appreciate it. And finally, massive thank you from all of us to all of you who've given up the last 45 minutes or so of your day to tune in and listen to us. And so with that, we're going to close today's session and webinar, and we wish you a very good rest of your day. Thank you all.